Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm ShyWizard. I'm going to do a video tutorial on adding tobacco into a map. I've just got a Goldcrest Valley sample mod map here. You may run into some conflicts if you're going to work with a map that has a lot of additional scripts and various other different parts on it. I'm going to use the additional map type script, so if you're working with a map that has a different script to add in the different fruit types or additional fruit types like the fruit register lure or whatever else, you may have some problems there, so you just need to work around that. But I can't cover every variation of map and script usage and whatever else, so I'm just going to have to work around that, I guess. So I've got Ozark Hills version 3 and Great Plains USA. These both have tobacco as a fruit type, so just to give you an example of what maps are available with it on, just choose one that's going to work for you, I guess. So I guess I'm going to let's use Great Plains USA, why not? So I think what I'm going to start with then is if I go into the maps folder and locate the map01.i3d, I'm going to open this in Notepad++, and then find all the appropriate parts I need to do with tobacco. So first of all I'm going to go to the materials section, and then I'm just going to scroll down here, just makes it a little easier for me to find what I want for the tobacco. Obviously you could do a search for tobacco, but I find this much easier to get to the area I want in my foliage sublayers. So I'm going to make a copy of this line here for the foliage sublayer. I'm going to create a new Notepad document. I'm going to put this down at the bottom here because I like to have it file IDs, material IDs, and then the foliage sublayer at the bottom. So I need to do a search here for my material ID. I've done this many times in other videos. I will do a backwards search, so because I know the materials are above the foliage multi-layers, so I'm going to make a copy of that and then put that, I don't know, somewhere up here like so. Then I'm going to search for my file ID for the actual foliage texture, so I'll just bring that up, and what I'm going to do is actually go to the top of the document and deactivate that, and then just go find next, and we have our foliage tobacco diffuse. So I'm going to make a copy of that line and then put that up the top here like so. Next I want to find all of the different distance map IDs. So I have 159 to 164. So if I do like so and then just click find next, we have 159. Actually what I will do is if I go back to the top of the document here and then click match whole word only, it will only find the 159 and not a number that has 159 in it, and then I just want all of those, the tobacco distance channels. Okay, so I'm going to copy all of those and then we'll just paste those in up here like so. I'm going to change my language over to XML just so it makes it a little clearer. And I can just, actually what I'll do is I'll just highlight these and delete that. There we go. And I'll do the same here just to bring it all up into something we can see a little easier. Okay, so now that I've got all of the parts there, I need to change the file IDs, material IDs to a slightly larger number than I've got here, because these numbers will more than likely already exist in the map that I'm going to bring this into, so I'll end up with conflicts. So just simply I'm going to add in a 00 on the end of all of these numbers to make it a much higher number than what is going to already exist in the map01.i3d. So we'll do that. Material ID will do the same, and for this file ID here we'll do this one down here for the material ID, and also my distance IDs as well. We'll add in the zeros there. Oops, too many. Okay, one thing to note, take a mental picture or whatever else of what block shape ID it's using and match it against what it is set in this map you're going to take it from, based against a standard fruit type, because sometimes it will be different depending on the map. I'm pretty sure this is going to be based around maize. So if I have a look at maize, which is 22 to 27, and then look at tobacco, This is also 22 to 27. So just make sure you take a note of that, and then when you bring it into whatever map you're going to put it on, you may need to adapt it to whatever standard fruit type it's based against. Otherwise it won't display the texture correctly. But I know now that it's set up against maize, so I can look at the map that I'm going to bring it into and just double check if I need to make any changes there. The density map type index I'm going to obviously change accordingly, so it follows on numerically for the map that I'm going to bring it into. I'm also going to reset the density map channel offset and the num density map channels back to standard, because this is the only fruit type I'm going to be adding to the map. So I don't want it to be set at 5 and 5, I'm going to put it back to 4 and 4 for the standard definitions or density channels and whatever else. So I don't need this open anymore, so I'm going to close that down. Oops. Let's bring this back over. So I need to find all of the appropriate textures here and then bring them into the map that I'm going to be working with. So we have foliage, tobacco diffuse. So if I go back to here and foliage, tobacco diffuse, so I'll make a copy of that. I'll bring up my sample mod map here and then just paste that into there like so in the foliage folder. I also need to find the distance textures. So we have textures, terrain, distance. So if I go back to the Great Plains USA map, I'm going to go maps, textures, terrain, distance, and I'll just do a search for tobacco, and we'll copy all of those, and then I'll do the same with this one. So I'll go maps, textures, terrain, distance, and then just paste them into there like so. Okay, so we now have all of our textures in the appropriate places. Fantastic. So the next one I need to do then is bring over all of these parts into the map 01 for the sample mod map here. So if I go into maps and then open up the map 01 i3D in Notepad++, I'll copy all the file IDs first. Whoops. So let's copy all of those and bring them in at the top. So I'll make a new line and then add them in like so. And I'll bring in the material ID stuff, so I'll copy that, and I'll then just do a search for materials, bottom of the materials section here, and add those in. And then I'll just bring in the foliage sublayer, so I'll make a copy of that, scroll down to the bottom here, we'll make a new line, and then just paste that in. So like I said before, I'm going to change the density map type index to follow on numerically, so I want to make this 14. I'm also going to change these back to 4 and 4 for the standard density channels there, so we'll go 4 on that one and 4 on that one. Okay, should be looking good so far. So I can go ahead and save that, close that down. I'll keep this open for now, just in case. So before I go any further, I'm going to open up the map here in Giants Editor. And I want to make sure that, one, I've got tobacco as a selectable fruit type. So I'm going to go Window, Terrain Editing, and then I'm going to make sure I'm set to Add, which I am. Come down to Foliage Layer, and we have tobacco. Fantastic. So find an area where you can paint it down. And I'm just going to go to the Terrain Foliage Paint mode. And let's go. So 4 is seeded, so we won't actually see anything, so we'll do 5. And we have our first growth stage, which is looking good. Then we have 6, 5 and 6, and then 4, 5 and 6, and they all look okay. Fantastic. Distance channels are all working, distance textures, so that's good. We'll do 7, which will be withered, and then 4 and 7, which will be cut short. So everything there would appear to be working okay. We've got no errors in the console, so that's fantastic. So I'm going to close down the map and not save it. And I'm going to reopen it again and then just save it to update the i3D. So we'll do like so, save it, update the i3D, and I can move on to the next step. So we can close that down. Fantastic. Okay, so let's do next then. Let's go back into here. I want to bring over the fruit HUDs. So if you're not entirely sure where they're going to be placed, if you open up the mod desk and then look where the additional map type parts are set up, you have your HUD directory. So we know from this that the HUDs are going to be in the folder fruit HUDs. We're going to have a tip on ground folder and also a build types folder. The build types folder is not absolutely required if you're not going to be working with anything that's going to require that. So you could in fact actually delete that entire section if you wanted to, but I'm going to keep it there in anticipation that I might bring in some additional fruit types that would require that to be there. So just sort of look ahead to see what else you might be bringing into the map later on. It's worth just creating that now, so you don't have to go back and then recreate all the path file names and whatever else later on. It's just going to be an empty folder, so it's not going to increase the size of your file or whatever else. It's not going to cause any issues. So creating it now will potentially reduce what you have to do later on if you bring in further additional fruit types that, like I say, will require it. So I'm going to create a folder called Fruit HUDs in my sample mod map here. So we'll just create a new folder, Fruit HUDs. I'm going to create a new folder called Tip on Ground. So it's easy to just copy and paste, that way you know you're going to get the spelling right. So we'll create that one, and I'll also do the build types. So new folder, and then paste that in build types. Fantastic. Okay, so if I actually minimize that, because I'll need to come back to that in a minute. So if we come into here and look for our folder fruit types, fruit HUD, sorry, and again we'll do a search for our tobacco, and we'll just highlight both of those, copy them, and put them into the new folder here for the fruit HUDs. We'll also do the same for the tip on ground. So if I come back to here, tip on ground, and again do a search for tobacco, and we have our tip on ground textures. So make a copy of that, come back into here, and paste those into there like so. Okay, we should now have some sort of a starting process to go by. We've got our build types, which obviously, as I say, is an empty folder. We have our foliage texture in here of our tobacco. We have our fruit HUDs set up, and we have our tip on ground set up. Fantastic. Okay, so moving on then, I think what I'm going to do then is I'm going to work with the, like I say, the additional map types Lua, so I'm going to copy that over. But this particular script is actually an older version, it's 1.0.0.7. So I'm not going to use that version, I'm going to use a slightly newer version, which I have on another map. So if I come into here, I have this in my Manchester edit, so I'm going to copy that from there and put that into my sample mod map like so. Entirely up to you which way you go. You can use the older script if you want, but the newer one adds a few extra functions and fixes and whatever else, so potentially I would say go with the new version, which is 1.0.0.9. But like I say, entirely up to you what you want to do. If you do go with the newer version, then the actual entries here for the fruit types will be slightly different the way it's laid out, so you'll need to work with the script examples to set it up correctly. So if you start copying all of this stuff and put it into your map with the later version of the script, you may run into some problems, so just be aware of that. So again, it might be better to use the older version of the script if you're not too fussed about the additional functions and the bug fixes. Okay, so what I want to do next then is work with the extra source files. So I'm going to copy over the tags here. So what I'll do is I'm actually going to close this down, so I don't need that anymore. And I'll open up the mod desk for the sample mod map here. I'll put my name in up here. Why not? Like so. And if I come down to here, make a few lines. I'm also going to add in the correct path there, because it never puts it in properly for whatever reason when you create your sample mod map. So I'm going to take the tags here, so I'm going to make a copy of that one and bring it in somewhere here. We'll make a copy of this one and bring it in somewhere here, and then also bring in the additional map type Lua section just here, like so. Okay, so I'll just tidy this up a little bit so for me makes it lines up everything correctly. Doesn't really matter, but I just like to do that, and I'm just going to delete the part of the beginning there because I've put it in a different position than what it is on the other map. Okay, so next then I need to work with, like I say, the parts here for the additional map type stuff, but like I said before, because I'm running a later script, this isn't going to work for me. So what I'm going to need to do is actually, if I close that down, I don't need that at the moment. So what I'm going to do is open up the new version of the script here, and it gives us examples like so. So if I take this top line here, make a copy of that and add that in. So again, it doesn't really matter where you put this. Let's put it down here, that's fine. So we'll do like so. And I'm just going to take a line. So I'm just going to go with, let's do, doesn't really matter. Again, like I say, let's do millet, why not? So if we take millet and put that into there like so. And then we'll just copy over the end tag to finish that off. Fantastic. So we'll close that down. So obviously what I want to do here is change this to tobacco. Make sure you spell it correctly, because otherwise it won't work, and I've already spelled it wrong, I think. There we go, I think that's right. I'll check that against the others in a minute, but I think that's right. Anyway, I guess then the next thing is to actually set up all these other parts correctly. So we want all of these to be set true, seeding width false, that's fine. It's not a sunflower type base fruit type, so we don't want a line to sun. If you want to experiment with that, by all means do so. All of the min harvest, max harvest, cut state, all of those are fine for me because I'm running the standard density channels. If you're adjusting your density channels, you may need to up these slightly or whatever else to get it to work correctly. Partial growth state false, that's fine. All of these other parts I'm not really fussed about. You might want to change the price per litre, litre per square metre, and seed usage, all the rest of it. We want it to show on the price table, we want it to show on our PDA map. Again, your mass per litre and stuff like that, you can change all of that if you so choose to. I'm going to just leave it as it is. Use for field job, that's fine, we can go with that. Min growth state, withering growth state, and all of those are fine. Reset spray true, yeah, we wanted to do that. It's not an earth fruit. Again, you can change all of this if you want to, just so you know at a glance what it's talking about, because you can have many different fruit types. When you look through it, it will say millet haulm, but it's not actually millet haulm, it's actually tobacco. So you might want to just change all of these to match in for the appropriate field type that you're going to be working with. Up to you entirely. All of those are fine, we'll leave that. It doesn't have a windrow, so I'm probably going to change that to false. All of those are fine. It also doesn't have straw, so I'm also going to change that to false. Now with these, if you actually have these set to true, what it will look for is a texture and a HUD associated with it. So the has windrow, if you leave that to true, it will look for a HUD underscore windrow or whatever, you know, and it will also look for a texture. Again, with straw, it will look for a particular texture associated with straw. So by changing them to false, that's going to then say I don't need that, so I don't need a texture associated with it, or a HUD for that matter. We want a fill, so it has fill, has material, has particle. We're going to use the heap, that's fine because I've set the tip on ground textures, so that's fine. In our tip on ground folder, to fill categories true, because we obviously wanted to have fill categories for our different equipment. So bulk would be tipper trailers and various things like that. We obviously want it set up as on the combine because we're going to have to harvest it with something. Forage harvester, again, this is going to be up to you if you want to harvest it for chaff or whatever else. I have no idea if you would actually do that with tobacco, but again, that's up to you. Forage wagon, I'm going to actually delete that, I think, and also the auger wagon and train wagon. I don't want any of those. So again, you know, you just need to work with whatever is going to set up for you. Now, I've deleted forage wagon for a simple reason, because the forage wagon has a pickup. If I leave it as a field type category, I would then need to set up the particle system for the forage wagon pickup, and I don't want to have to do that. Again, all these parts in here, irregardless of what you put in the map, if you set it up incorrectly, it will request a particular material holder with a texture applied to it, because it's looking for that, because it has that particular category set to it. So like I say, with the forage wagon, it's going to look for a particular particle system or material holder associated with the pickup, and because I don't have one, then it's going to cause an error and it will show me a warning or whatever else. So just have to play around with these field type categories to get what you want out of it. So bolt combine, forage harvester and fork is perfectly fine for what I need. So to fill fruit groups, I'll get it right in a minute. We obviously want that to be set to true, because otherwise we won't be able to seed it or harvest it or do whatever else. So I want sowing machine, that's perfectly fine, you can do whatever you want with that. But I don't want on the grain header. In my particular case, what I want is the maize header. So I'm going to change that, because it's in this particular case, game-based setup. And you have to remember that these things are game-based setup. It's not necessarily true to life, and I don't have access to a tobacco harvester, so I'm going to have to use a standard combine harvester with a header of some description. But game-based wise, it's set up as a maize type fruit, if you like, or maize type crop. So I'm going to set it against the maize header and not a grain header. And direct cutter would then be representative against the forage harvester, so I'm also going to want that one as well. I don't want to feed it to any of my animals, so I'm going to leave all of those as false. That's perfectly fine. And again, with the bale type name, it's not relevant because I haven't got a bale set up for it, but I'm just going to put the name in here so that it all just matches in, so I can see when you've got many different fruit types in here, or field types for that matter. When you're looking across all of these different things, if you don't name it right, it can be sometimes difficult to then know exactly what you're looking at, and you have to do a lot of scrolling across to see which fruit type you're actually working with. Whereas if you name them correctly for all of the different sections here, it's just much easier in my opinion. So we don't have a square bale or a round bale, and again, like I said, with the forage wagon, it's not relevant, but it needs to be there, so we can leave that as is. Okay, so I have all of those parts set up there, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm also going to put in an L10N section here, just for my own whatever you want to call it. When you have a different, a field type, fruit type, whatever else, whatever you put in here, if you don't include it in the L10N, it will just take the name directly from here. So at the moment it's just going to call it tobacco, which is perfectly fine because that's what it is. But I want it to actually display it slightly differently with a capital T and not a lowercase t. So I'm going to put a translation, if you like, in the L10N section here to do that. So I have to remember how to do this because I haven't done it in a while. So what I'm actually going to do is, if I open up the mod desk for this one, you can just take a copy of whatever from here. So we'll just do like that and just paste it in, and I'll just change the name here. And then in this one I'll just type in tobacco, but with a capital T. Not too worried about the translation for German or any other language. So we'll just do like so, and I'll just tidy that up slightly, and then I'll just end that off with a closed tag like so. Okay, so we've now got our L10N and our scripts and our additional map types section all set up. So we can go ahead and save that, and I'll close that down because I don't need that open anymore for now. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and separate these videos up so they're not too long. So this is 25 minutes or so in. So I'm going to call this part 1, and then in part 2 we'll look at our fill planes, particle systems, and how to set up the appropriate material holders for all of those. So I'm ShyWizard, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.